Welcome everyone to the program. Today, I am so thrilled to be speaking to Richard Peirce. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. We've been planning it for a while, so finally it's happening. So for those of you who may not be aware of who Richard Peirce is, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who he is. So Richard is well known as a shark conservationist. He's the former chairman of the Shark Conservation Society and the Shark Trust, and he still serves on the boards of both NGOs. More recently, he has authored several books, including The Poacher's Moon, an expose of rhino-poaching, also Giant Steps, which is a book about the abuse of captive elephants, and Nicole, which deals with the hunting and dissemination of sharks. Richard and his wife, Jacqui, are confirmed nomads who spend half the year in South Africa. Their love of wildlife takes them to the bush at every opportunity. And then just to tell you a little bit about the book that we're discussing today, which is Cuddle Me Kill Me. So I'm very excited to speak about this very, very powerful, but also very scary book sometimes. So let me just tell you a little bit about the book. So canned lion hunting sprang to the world's attention with the 2015 launch of the documentary Blood Lions. This movie blew the cover of a brutal industry that has burgeoned in the last decade or so, operating largely under the radar of public concern. So in Cuddle Me, Kill Me, veteran wildlife campaigner Richard Peirce reveals horrifying facts about the industry. He tells the true story of two male lions rescued from a breeding farm, the exploitation and misery of these apex predators when they are bred in captivity, how young cubs are removed from their mothers mere hours after birth, their subsequent use for walking with lions, tourism, and how in the final stage of exploitation, they are served up in fenced enclosure for execution by canned hunters, or simply shot by breeders for the value of their carcass, a prized product in the East. Well researched by Peirce with the help of an undercover agent and illustrated with photos taken along the way, this is a disturbing and passionate plea to end commercial captive lion breeding and the repurposing of wildlife to cater for human greed. So Cuddle Me, Kill Me, part of the proceeds will go to Born Free. And so maybe Richard will tell us a little bit about that foundation called Born Free. So Richard Peirce, welcome to the program. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me.
Thank you. It's good to be talking to you.
Thank you. So the first question is, how long did it take you to compile this book, the photos and the text? And also, why did you choose to publish this book now, at this point in time?
This book was, I think, the fourth in a series for Strict Nature. And all my books try to tell the stories of real existing animals. And through their stories, and I try to tell them like adventure stories. So although they're factual and true, or if they're, when I don't know the facts, I have to stay within the parameters of what probably was the case. I couldn't find any lions to tell the story of. So that delayed me. And my wife had been badgering me for about 3 or 4 years before I wrote the book to write something about canned hunting. And then about 3 things happened at once. We saw a film called Blood Lions, which you've mentioned. We came across 2 lions. So I had my cast, I had my characters, and I could see how to do the story. So that was that was 2 years ago now. And how long did it take? It was probably 24 months from start to finish. And that involved an awful lot of running around in South Africa. If I'm going to write about somewhere or something, I really want to go there, see it, look at it, smell it, taste it, blah, 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 to try and make sure that I'm qualified to comment. So we visited, I can't remember now, but 50, 60 establishments doing lion breeding or lion cub petting of lions or walking with lions or hunting lions. So the research took a long time. Then we had, of course, to do the photographs, etc., etc. These projects, I would say, from absolute start to finish, all of these books are about a 2-year project.
Well, and then can you tell us a little bit about the Born Free Foundation? You say in the cover, part of the proceeds will go to Born Free.
Born Free is, I think, for anyone interested in lions, fascinating, because there was a story back in the 60s of 2 lions in Kenya, or one very famous lion in Kenya called Elsa. And Elsa was released back into the wild by a famous couple, a British couple but Kenyan, living in Kenya, and they reintroduced Elsa to the wild, and she successfully was reintroduced and stayed in the wild and produced cubs, etc., etc., etc. And then their name was George and Joy Adamson, and it came out as a book, very successful book in the 60s called Born Free, talking about Elsa, and then became a film. And the film starred Virginia McKenna and her husband, Bill Travers. And they were so moved by the whole thing of captive animals that they believe wild animals are born free and should stay free. So they started this NGO. I'm not sure of the foundation date, but I'm guessing it's got to be 50 years ago now. They started this NGO called Born Free, which is now a global NGO and is quite active in South Africa as well. Born Free has animals, for example, at 2 or 3 of the lion sanctuaries and other places which they've rescued. And their son, a guy called Bill Travers' son, he's now the CEO and boss of Born Free, which is campaigning every single day for wild animals to stay wild. If they're born free, they should stay free. And his mother, Virginia McKenna, she is still alive, and she's, I don't know how old, but well in her 80s, I'm guessing. And she's still every day active and fighting for what she believes in. So it's a powerful story. They're very big in the UK and the US, but they're quite big in many African countries as well.
You know, Richard, as I was reading this book, it was fascinating in some parts, but also it was very scary in some parts. Also, I want to mention one of the things I appreciated is that the chapters are very short. They're very concise. So it's not overburdened with text. So it's easy to get through. So I appreciated that very much. But I also thought about slavery as I was reading this book. I thought about this is what slavery, what these lions have been going through could be. You could speak about it in terms of their slavery. This is how slavery really functions.
Absolutely. And I think we need to remember that lions are one of the similarities. There are many similarities between lions and humans, but one of the similarities is that they live in family groups. And they exhibit a lot of the emotions that humans exhibit, if you listen after them to be able to study them. And so actually, if they're in captivity, they are effectively in slavery.
Yes.
You know, they're there purely for the benefit of their owners. So whether you 300-400 years ago, I'm afraid my history is not great, but whether you were a slave, a human slave then, or an animal slave today, I'm afraid that for me there's not much difference, and it should all stop. And you know, I know we're not here to talk about elephants, but I did a previous book on elephants called Giant Steps, which you've mentioned. You know, in a way, that's even worse. Because we know that their intelligence is massive. And the big question has to be for an animal that has been captured in the wild and put in captivity, whether it's a lion or an elephant, do they know they're in captivity? Because if they do, we've put them in prison.
Yes.
So they are in prison and they are slaves. And with an animal as intelligent as an elephant,
yes.
And I'm not so. Then this is horrifying to think that we're doing this in 2021.
Yes.
And for lions, you've hit the nail on the head. We are creating a whole bunch of slaves for human enrichment.
Yes. And then I just want to, so between pages 24 and 25, firstly, on part 1 of the book, you introduce us to Oliver and Obi. So Oliver and Obi are the main lions or the main protagonists in this book. And I
Yeah.
also appreciate how you write the book as a story. It's not just facts about lions, but it's not just information, but it's actually a story that one actually goes. And I've read your other books as well, and they go into a story, and you find yourself absorbed into the story, and you start to see the animals as people, as real characters. So I appreciated that very much. So you introduce us to Oliver and Obi, and also you tell us about their experience when they were taken to Cheetah Experience. So that's one of the facilities that you speak about in the book, and maybe we'll have time to speak about that. And then I'll just read a little bit of what you write on page 24 about Obi. So you say, so this is on page 24. Before dawn, on 26 October, about 50 kilometers away from Bloemfontein, at the same farm that had bred Oliver and his sisters, the same sick drama as before was taking place. But this time, one would result in heartache for Lizane and her volunteers over the course of the next month. Watched by keepers, a lioness had given birth to 3 cubs, 2 males and a female. 2 hours later, when the keepers were sure there would be no more cubs born, they approached the cage and frightened the lioness, who ran to the far side of the enclosure, temporarily deserting her newborn cubs. Normally, she would have picked up a cub before running for safety, but so great was her fear and panic that she didn't do this. The keepers were ready. As soon as she moved away, they opened the gate and 2 of them went into the den and grabbed the cubs, while the 3rd keeper kept a close eye on the lioness. Then they stole away into the dawn, while an anguished and highly distressed mother paced the fence, calling out for her young. Throughout the day, she returned repeatedly to the den and sniffed the place where her cubs had been born only a few hours earlier. That's tragic. That's you can feel the heartache of that lioness. But is this so in all the petting facilities? So, for example, you mentioned Cheetah Experience as one of those facilities where people can go and pet and maybe even feed the cubs. Are all those cubs in those facilities, and perhaps even in zoos, are all of them captured this way, or are there some that have actually been rescued?
That's a very good question. I suppose there must be some, but compared to the figure of those that are born specifically for this purpose and are intensively bred and then taken away from their mum so they can be used, I would suggest that the genuine rescue figure is absolutely tiny, almost insignificant. I don't have an accurate figure, but I would think 99% of the animals you see in petting and walking with or feeding facilities, they've all been specifically, intensively, that their mothers have intensively bred them for this purpose. Yeah, so I think, the story that volunteers are told about helping conservation and helping to feed rescued cubs is complete nonsense. There is no benefit to conservation whatsoever. These animals cannot be released. So there's, that they're only of benefit to the people making money from them. But you've raised a very interesting point. Let's look at the stages. So, stage 1 is cubs are born. They're born from a mother who's producing many more cubs than she should be, because she's just become a breeding machine. So in the wild, they'd be producing a litter once every couple of years. Suddenly they're producing litter after litter. So then you take the cubs away. And then the first stage is that volunteers pay to bottle feed the cubs. And the volunteers have been told this story about how they're helping conservation, they're helping rescued animals that would otherwise die, etc., etc. Yes, they would otherwise die, but only because mankind has taken them away from their mothers. So when that phase is over, the bottle feeding phase, and these volunteers can pay a lot of money. And I've heard figures of $1,000 a week to sort of go to these places and feed these cubs. And they tend to be Northern European volunteers, Scandinavians, people from Holland, Belgium, UK, France, Germany, but Scandinavia and UK seem to be the main providers of these volunteers who have been conned. They've been sold a false narrative. So they arrive in South Africa as volunteers, thinking they're rescuing and helping conservation, and they're paying for the privilege to do so, upwards of $1,000 a week in many cases. The next stage when they is that the cubs get cuddled by the public. So you can pay to go in and cuddle a lion cub. This occurs a little bit further on down the track. And I've seen appalling instances of cubs which should be sleeping 18, 20 hours a day, just incessantly being picked up. And they're so tired, they can hardly walk. And then people paying to pet them come in, and the keepers will sort of carry them, prod them, push them towards the people, because all these poor little guys want to do is lie down and go to sleep. And then the next stage for some of them, not all of course, but for some of them, is walking with lions, and they're taught by fairly brutal methods to fear humans carrying sticks. So you pay to go walking with young adults, sub-adults, and then that's the third stage, and then the fourth stage is either getting shot for canned hunting or for something we haven't mentioned yet called the bone trade. One of the most horrible things about this is that the bone trade just requires a skeleton.
Oh.
So all they want is a skeleton. They don't need to give them, the animal does not have to be in good condition. It doesn't have to be well looked after. It can be half dead. It can be walking along on sort of, struggling along on three legs and hardly able to move. As long as it's got a skeleton, it can pretend it's a tiger and be worth a lot of money.
So aside from the trophy, that perhaps if a hunter has hunted a lion and killed a lion, what do they use the bones for?
Okay. Trophy hunting has now taken a bit of a dive, because the case of Cecil the lion, which you will remember from
Yes.
was a huge global story.
Yes.
And Cecil's story broke around the world at the same time, more or less, as Bloodlines, the film, came out. So that resulted in a lot of pressure to reduce trophy hunting of captive bred lions, so canned hunting. And the big thing was the United States banned the import of captive bred canned hunted lions. So people breeding lions then needed another avenue for what they were breeding. Because in the old days, yes, the trophy was the head, it was the skin, it would end up on a wall in someone's study in Texas or something, or a rug on the floor or something. But suddenly, with the US ban on trophy imports, they had to find some other way of making money. And so they started they started taking advantage of the fact that there aren't enough tigers in the world, and lions and tigers skeletons are impossible to tell one from the other. So you can pass a lion skeleton off as a tiger skeleton, and then to get to your question, it ends up going to China and other Far Eastern countries to be used in various ways. Tiger wine, tiger balm, tiger this, that, and the other. And very sadly, increasingly, lion claws, teeth, skins, all these things are being used in the trinket trade.
The trinket.
Trinkets, bits of jewelry to go around
Yeah. Oh,
your
yes,
neck,
yes.
or a lucky charm, or a tooth on a keyring or something, and they have huge value. So it's worthwhile going and poaching or killing a lion just for the trinket trade, and then you've got the skeleton. And yeah.
But I just want to quickly talk about the death rate of the cubs. So because the cubs are taken from their parents at birth many times, and surely some of them die. So for example, on page 29, 2 cubs that Lisanne was looking after actually died. She felt that additionally, Opal's bone deformities were probably due to inbreeding, and there had possibly been other deformities in her organs that the x-rays had not revealed. Although the 2 cubs had appeared to be progressing, perhaps all the time their underlying problems had been waiting in ambush. They were both casualties of the lion breeding industry. So Richard, on average, how many cubs die during this process of being transported, being taken from their parents to such a facility?
you hear a lot of different figures, but if we take the actuality of Obi's family, there were 3 cubs. Obi is the only survivor. The other 2 cubs are the ones you've just been reading about in the book. So in that case, in that family, 66% of the cubs, 2/3 died. I don't know that anybody knows a figure because these establishments are fairly secretive. But my guess would be probably that up to 50% of cubs probably died.
So at the beginning of part 2 in the book, you tell us about your visit to Zogfontein.
Yeah.
A place where you could walk with lions. So in this experience, you write, so on page 62, you write about how lions are trained to walk and not to attack humans, maybe to tame the wilderness. So you say, so this is on page 62, we carried sticks as well, which we had been told to take because they would help us walk. I made a point of saying I didn't need or want a stick, but was very firmly told to take one. I knew from previous research that lions trained to walk with humans are conditioned to fear sticks by being hit with them when they are still cubs. And so sticks are an effective defense mechanism, ensuring that the lions keep their distance. So aside from hitting the lions with sticks, what other training mechanisms are there to tame them?
They don't have to actually be tamed because don't forget, these guys have been bottle fed. So they are very, very tame. What you're doing is you're making sure that they don't turn for any reason aggressive and become a threat. And so it's like the stick is a defense mechanism. And they train them because they'll hit them with sticks when they're cubs, so they become naturally afraid of sticks. So you've got this big stick in your hand and you're walking along with it. They're not going to approach you because that stick is an object of fear. I was talking to one guy in one facility, and he said they trained them with rubber hose pipes. And so what they'll do is they'll fill a hose pipe with water to make it a little bit less flexible and make it a bit heavier. And a short 4 or 5 feet, 1.5 meter piece of hose pipe, they hit them with those because that resembles a stick. So these are all ways of making it safe to walk with a predator. But we must remember that these are predators that are totally from birth habituated to humans. So you're not the wildness. I wouldn't say it's been taken out of them. I don't believe you can ever take it out. But you're just creating a fear mechanism to try and keep yourself safe and keep your customers. But the whole thing is nonsense because one of the places I went to, I think we were with 3 lions, maybe 4, and they all ran off chasing. I think they were chasing a impala or a zebra or something. They all ran off, and the handlers had absolutely no idea where they were. So we suddenly had 5 or 6 or 7 people wandering around in the bush with 4 or 5 lions, and the handlers didn't know where the hell they were. Now you imagine, you've been told that the last thing you must do is turn your back on a lion and run away. Because if you do that, you're inviting it to end up on your back. That's a flight. That's a response to flight. Okay.
Yes.
That's okay to tell people that, but how many tourists are going to be able to do it if they suddenly get frightened of a lion? So you imagine that you're a tourist, a foreign tourist, well, any tourist, South African tourist, doesn't matter. You're out there in the bush, and suddenly you look around, and there's this guy creeping up on you. Huh? Are you really going to stand there and stare at it if it starts to charge you and you're not sure whether it's really charging or not? You'll probably turn and run, and then you'll be wearing it on your neck.
Yes.
And we had 4 of these guys out there. They were probably 11 to 13 months old, something like that. And we didn't know where the hell they were. I mean, that is incredibly dangerous.
Yes. Yes. Wow.